Next item on the agenda is this, discussion potential action related to an outside place of use compliance plan as required by the State Division of Water Rights. Pete, you want to go over this?
Yeah, we, in part of our response back to the state, from the agenda item that we discussed last month, we have to propose a compliance plan. Basically, the state wants to know how is it that we're going to assure them that under all circumstances, considering that meters are inaccurate, you know, on both the well side as well as customer side, and equipment is not all that reliable and everything. What is our compliance plan to make sure that we don't have this problem in the future? And the problem being months that have more consumption outside the place of use than we have groundwater supply in the system. And so this, in reality, there's been a lot of back and forth conversation with Elizabeth and myself in talking about ways to make this happen. And in looking at the data all the way back from 2000 to 2011, and then 2011 to current, and the changes in the consumption, and because there's been about you know, at least 50% consumption drop from back on the average from between 2000 to 2011, and throughout our customer base, not just outside place use, but throughout our customer base, we've had a big drop in consumption over the years. But we're going to have to assure the state that we're not going to have a problem. I mean, if a well turns off and sits off for 3 weeks during July, you know, and that's the only well operating, it'll probably never catch up. It can only go so fast, you know. So we can respond. In reality, this is just, I'm putting this on the agenda for full disclosure because I don't want to have any misunderstandings about any piece of this. In reality, it could be as simple as just saying that we have adequate groundwater supply for compliance in the future, and the state may not ask any more. But they may come back and say, we want an engineering study that says, you know, you absolutely do. At this point, I don't know. I can't just call and say, hey, what do you want this thing to look like? They, you know, they want us to put it out there. So this document, I just penciled it out to just give a little bit of background on the existing issue and the operating plan. Those steps were developed based on input back and forth between Elizabeth and I. And following these steps would certainly assure the state that there would be an adequate source of supply. It adds a little bit of work just in going, you know, doing additional reads on the outside place use customers to make sure we don't have we have one connection with a huge leak and it just went the entire month. It can throw your balance off quite a bit. The state really, there's nothing in the regulations and nothing in our documents that require them to come after us on a monthly basis, but we're not going to get them off of that right now.
I was just gonna ask, is the accounting gotta be monthly? Does the state require monthly accounting or annual?
The state is, the state's feedback to me was that instantaneous.
How is that possible?
Well,
That's why we have special meters now.
It's control, it's, the way that it is instantaneous is if you've got meters that tell you what the consumption is, and you know, can set alarms, and you can also set your production, your groundwater production, to match that always. That's the way it would have to go. in other words, you're, you know, well number 2 come on, well number 3 come on, well number 4 come on, now this one off, now this one off. I mean, it's programmable logic, it's normal stuff.
But if you're 25 acre feet ahead, a month ahead, year to date, you can't turn the pump off.
No. And also, we don't have you know, the interesting thing is we've got 3 acre feet stored in that tank. The maximum consumption over the last 5 years in a month was 2 acre feet. You know, from the outside place of use customers. So we could have it stored in there, but we can't, it's too much of a calculation to try to figure out how much water came into that tank, how much was left over at what time, and
Okay, I gotta ask this question. The board has said that we really don't wanna depend on well water as our primary. Where possible, we wanna save our wells, with the exception of this well was needed for, but the bottom line is, running this pump is actually cheaper than using lake water all the time. So there's really no downside in running this thing around the clock if it'll take it. Is that true?
But does it have to be that well? It doesn't have to be that well.
If
can
it
be-
fails, we could use another one, but then we're against our own policy of wanting to save the other wells for drought emergencies only, not to commit that water to anything except our customers, existing customers.
the thing we do need to, we have to, we need to clarify on the record keeping with the state is which well was operated when.
What's the point?
No,
of all
separate,
this?
that's the drinking water side, so that if there was ever a drinking water standard failure, that they could say, hey, you better check well 2, you know?
What's the point of all this? I mean, I don't understand it. This seems just,
The state wants, the state, in their actions related to water rights, are looking to, I'm being really nice, they're wanting to accurately account for every drop of water, surface and now groundwater. And this is, it's a process. You've got to go through an extensive process through the Division of Water Rights to establish these boundaries or to amend the boundaries. You have to petition the state and amend it. And it's a way for them to make sure that the water's accounted for under this permit.
well, originally, MID said, extend the boundaries. So why didn't they? What's the problem? Why can't they extend the boundaries?
They don't wanna open up
Are you
their.
talking about the place of use?
Yes,
It's not a matter of that they don't want to. You have to go through a process to do it, which requires a secret documentation and, you know, the California Environmental Quality Act. All of the water rights holders and interests in any of the water supply either in or out of that reservoir are likely going to come to the table and lodge their concerns about MID's expansion of the place of use, because you know, somebody downstream wants that water. I'm just telling you, this is the way it works in
To get open up,
California water.
what I'm interpreting, and this is my perception, we have a contract currently with MID, and I'm gonna round numbers off, because I don't remember the exact specifics, that we have the ability to take 5,000 acre feet a year out of the reservoir for our community, meeting all the criteria. Theoretically, if we opened up that, we could lose that if somebody else, I mean, that'd probably be worst case scenario, but that's a possibility that MID could come back and say, you know, we can't do this anymore, you're gonna be on your own, and you're gonna lose that water allocation. I mean, I don't know if that could happen, but it's a possibility in this crazy world. So that's, you know,
I can't imagine it. MID's been with us all along, and they're the ones that offered that to us. I mean, I just can't imagine that happening, but, I mean, unless we went to a drought like we did a couple of years ago, but.
I think we just have to make sure that due to the fact the way, I mean, the district was set up with the boundaries and the way the contract is written, we have to make sure that we do that. The one question I had, Pete, as I read this, it says, review groundwater reports on a weekly basis and adjust operations for any anomalies, including operating additional wells on a temporary basis, makeup basis as required. But how, my question in my brain is, yeah, we could say how much water was produced in the last week, but unless we know what was consumed out there, we wouldn't know if we needed to make up anything. Follow what I'm saying? So would we have to go back and read the meters weekly or bi-monthly or twice a month, so that we had the time? But then again, if we got behind that week, then we can't really make it up, so we're still, I'll say, out of compliance, that we didn't produce enough that 1 week to meet everybody's requirements. So how do we stay in compliance? I mean, if that's,
This is absurd.
This is a little bit disruptive, I'd say.
You're disruptive.
But you're right, I mean, that was Elizabeth's recommendation is that we read the meters twice a month.
and that was
We would read those,
residential or,
the outside place of use.
I didn't really capture that in here, that's why.
Well, you know, I didn't put that in there because I'm not absolutely certain that that's the answer that we want to do.
Okay.
I just hate to say producing a report, you could automatically generate a report every week. So that's just a programming thing, but the reading the meters, I don't want that to be a compliance issue.
Okay.
You know, the more things I set out there, the more chance for compliance problems, because it may not be needed, you know? But I'm not sure just how logistically it would be to read those. They're on the periphery, there are not many of them, but if we can program it to just read those or pull those numbers off. And it takes an hour to drive and get those reads and process that information. It might not be a problem to do that and compare.
Going back to last month, there was some anomalies on the map of some potentially outside place to use things that often strange places. Did that get resolved?
It will not until we do some extensive work.
Okay.
We have to know what, specifically what properties are inside and out according to the state.
You know, it seems to me that they're making that really difficult so that you don't expand outside place of use. And this board has said we're not going to. Maybe you need to tell them we're not gonna expand it, maybe that'll also make it happy. Because we said no more expansion outside, which I think is a good idea, given the complexities of what they want. I mean, they're making it difficult to do this outside place of use, which we don't wanna do it anyway. You know, we've got as many as we've got, that's plenty. That was decided long ago, and we didn't decide it, it's there. So, you know, we've got a moratorium, maybe need to leave it on forever. Just say we don't do it anymore, because it's just a big problem. It's been a problem for a long time, we don't need to make the problem worse.
But you have, if you've added another property.
I know, that's why I'm
already.
gonna go home and try to figure that out.
Yeah, because by adding that other
Because it would say
property,
the names.
that's right, by adding that other property, it's a
Did you
violation of the federal, USDA's grant, because it said no more service connections. We've already violated it.
Did you look up the names and stuff?
How can I look at
There's
it?
no
Oh, you don't keep it
there's no additional connections.
Okay.
Then why did the state say there is?
Oh,
they're wrong again?
It's not even, I'm just telling you, within this compliance report and within what we're doing, there has not been any added in the last 3 years. I don't know about before that. I don't know when the
We're
last.
reading page 3 again.
I think the only
So-
thing, Pete, that was added, that never was in there before, was a sewer treatment plant.
But it's been on the report.
I don't know if it was.
Yeah, it's been on for a long
It
time.
has been, okay.
So, no.
All right.
No, this is a new one.
All right.
So, gotta be a name, Lou.
So can we ask the state to reimburse us for the cost of this?
No, because
Of what?
this is expensive, we have to comply with what they're wanting.
I
mean,
know,
it's
we
no
get
different
to
than
comply with
Well,
that.
we had it, you think about it, we had an issue, someone said we're out of compliance, we have to come back and address that issue. We have to answer their questions.
This all seems really,
It is, I know, but, you know, the nice thing is if we can come through it, we can comply and we can solve the problem, then it's just, as Russ puts it, it's one less skeleton in our closet. So that's, you know, I think we'll be okay. I know we haven't added any new services because we haven't expanded this place, so it's, you know. So,
You don't even know how many you have outside.
There is a
now.
good point, though, the discussion of the moratorium and providing additional service, that the restriction or information about the fact that there's a specific process, that, in other words, if a connection comes in inside the place of use, they just show up, give their connection fee, and replace a meter, and off they go. We start to bill them on a monthly basis. There's, you know, that authorization is provided to staff to add those within the place of use. Outside the place of use, it's restricted. If that restriction were to be, were to not be in place as an absolute no, but everything had to be reviewed by the board, and that the requirement is that anybody that proposes a connection, because they're inside of our district boundaries, that's the boundary that's been established for us to provide supply. It's not unusual for the connection fee or off-site requirements or anything, is you have to produce the supply needed to serve your property. In other words, they have to develop a well and dedicate it to the district. In many cases, it's not going to work out too well for somebody who's doing a single-family residential unit, and to try to get that connected to the system where we can actually use it, it probably will never work out. They'll probably never be able to do it, but in some cases it might. And so that's, I'm not putting that resolution restriction on the table. That's a separate discussion of the board. All I'm saying is that it's not unusual in a compliance report where it would say any future connections within the district that are served water supply that are outside the place of use would have to provide additional water supply. They'd have to provide a water supply to offset the demand.
Jim has a comment. Jim?
More of a question, because I'm not familiar with the history of the Ranchito well. I'm reading in here that said that it was, when they originally did it, 70 gallons per minute or 9.28 acre feet, and then we throttled it down. For what reason did it get throttled down to 35 gallons per minute, way back when, whenever that was?
When the, well, really, if 5 years or 6 years is the way back when.
Was it based on hydrologist
It was based
recommendation?
on the, no, it was based on Elizabeth Binkley's recommendation that 72 gallons a minute was pretty much right at the maximum production of that well, and she's not able to determine whether that's safe yield or not. Based on the evaluation that was done, you know, there were impacts of operating it at 70 gallons a minute constantly around the clock. Just like our wells, they may produce, the other new wells, 90 gallons a minute, but there was a 6-month timeline, and then reevaluate, okay? The situation was there in her report. She listed that the state was only going to take into consideration 50% of that from a permitting perspective.
Okay.
And so that's where the number of 35 gallons a minute came up, is when she said the state's only going to permit it for half of that. Then, for whatever reason, the directive was given to turn the well down to 35 gallons a minute, and that's, it just...
Who directed that?
I don't know. I have to assume Ralph did, but it might have been a board directive, I don't know.
Okay.
It probably was the manager, probably.
Okay. So it didn't come to the engineer
To turn it down?
to turn it
No,
down?
she was.
That's
she
what I
was-
make sure she's not
No, she's
flip-flopping here.
completely blown away,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
But she
That's where I'm
also-
She was
going.
blown
So
away.
you answered my
She
question.
said that it was a misunderstanding of the report.
Okay, that's what you're going with, because what I read in here and what I thought were two different things. Because it sounded like the engineer said, at the beginning they said 70 gallons a minute, and then the engineer said 35 gallons a minute, and now she's back up to the roughly 70 gallons per minute in her recommendation. So I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
And
she-
when
but
she
she's not
said
standing by that as a long-term.
And I understand that, yeah, I understand that,
She
because it's
said
gonna
no
be
new
cycling.
connections, when she said that, she wrote that report, I recommend you don't have any more connections to this well.
Right, and that was based on the
And that's when the board
evaluation.
came up with the more,
Right.
whatever you wanna call
It was based on the evaluation of the data from 2000 to 2011
it.
for the outside place of use, and then applying a peaking factor of 1.5 to the highest month. And that's where that number came, and then turning it into a gallon per minute production, 72 gallons a minute, was with that peaking factor for those years. But the maximum at that point in time, I believe she said it was 6 acre feet, that was a maximum month. But now we're at 2 acre feet, so we've got I'm not saying we got a surplus, I'm just saying we need to take a look at the numbers, and we need to get some professional outside evaluation of it, just to take a look at the data of both that we've accumulated over our existing new wells and our Ranchito well, and just, but that was a good rough number, 70 gallons a minute.
Is it legal to put a flow control upstream of meters? So in other words, you can limit the total flow to any particular meter or any particular down any line if you want to.
You can. It's typically pull it out, put the restrictor in there, and it is just like a washer that restricts it down to.
I understand, I know, I've used them, I've applied them in industrial applications, but say for example, you want to make sure that nobody in outside place of use can over-demand the system. So, you say, well, a 3/4 inch meter will put a 15 gallon a minute flow restrictor in it, and it can't ever draw more than 15, and they'll never suck my tank dry. And you do that to 35 people, and now you've limited the maximum peak capacity of the system instead of being full pipe diameter or whatever the meter will allow. I mean, is that possible? Could you consider that kind of a
Anything
remedy?
is possible with engineering.
Okay,
I mean,
it's simple stuff.
it's, we'd have to evaluate, how much, I don't know how much this would cost, I don't know if it takes other technology, or if it's just a
It's rubber washer.
restrictor, huh?
It's rubber washer.
No, I understand. On some people, it might take, they might use 18 gallons a minute, twice every so often, and if we restrict it down and their system doesn't work, then they've got to reconfigure their system. I don't know. It's just different. We don't do it on anybody else, so it's,
But could you put a restriction on certain individuals within the district and others you don't? Wouldn't that be sort of discriminatory?
it's a rate, it's kind of a rate issue. If you had rationale and had to do it and adopted it as part of your policy in a public meeting and took public input on it and you can pretty much do any of that, but I wouldn't recommend it as part of a compliance plan, because I think it's not necessary to change the level of service.
It'd be hard for the minority to convince the majority because they would not have the votes to override that. Because there's 35 against 1,000 something. So how would they ever win that?
But we're really talking about just limiting massive peaks, not total demand. I mean, a garden hose, maximum you're ever gonna get out of a garden hose is 6 gallons a minute. So if you're doing more than 3 garden hoses would allow, what would it?
So
You
somebody
feed
bought,
water 1,000 cows on a garden hose.
so somebody who's got like a 2-inch meter, or whatever the biggest meter you could get restricted down even though they're paying more money per month for a bigger meter, because I know you have different size meters. Correct?
Yeah, okay, maybe it's not a good idea.
So let me, is there, do we have concerns with reconnecting the Ranchito well? I'm just kind of going through the recommended action plan, okay? I think we're gonna put that one back online, get it going, and And I would recommend that we have somebody come take a look at it and see, you know, look at the data, that a hydrogeologist at some point, and take a look at the data and see, you know, how long can it sustain operating at the 70 gallons a minute? Okay, I mean, it has before.
We can tell the depths and all that.
Yes, we will have both we'll have a real-time flow transmitter, or flow transmitter plus a level transducer, so we'll know what is in the column, and,
We can see trends and
yeah, oh yeah.
then you're gonna have water.
And then you'll want to
sample
shut it off and see how it recovers, and if it recovers the same amount, and, you know, you'll need to do that to see what that backup reservoir is doing wherever it's coming from, through the fissures. You know, so there's a certain method that they'll go through to evaluate it.
Why is it not online now?
Just we haven't had any people, we haven't had the ability to plan it and get it done, we've got
Isn't
plans.
that an Irish, isn't
What's
that
that?
an Irish, isn't that an Irish thing?
No, it's Elizabeth Binkley right now, doing the design. She's designing the connection, because we're,
I thought it was fixed a long time.
no, well, the pump, yeah, the pump is done.
Oh,
And the well casing is done, it's a matter of just finishing the piping drawings and having a bid submitted on it, and
did we get a
contracting
grant?
for it.
Did we
Huh?
get a grant to do that or not? Was there a grant, was that grant money or?
It's not, but it could be, I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
I'm not saying, I just thought it was.
If there's contingency money left over, in USDA, then I will be seeing if they'll go there.
Okay.
You know, there's no reason to
Just curious.
not access $100,000.
This is only going on 2013 and 14. It's not going on now, right?
What's that?
That we were violating, that we were going out, we were not providing enough water up.
Right, because we put the other wells online,
Oh.
basically.
So there's not a problem then?
But we gotta, they cited the fact that we said that those wells are emergency only, and we were running them at that time because of the emergency, so now what? That's what they wanna know.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so number one, we have, it sounds like we're fine, let's go get Ranchito Duns in the budget, ready to go. The operation of the other wells, I got some feedback from the board at the last meeting, we don't understand why we gotta run those other wells, we should just go turn them on and off, turn them on and off. That's possible, that's a lot of, that's, you know, I mean, it's driving around, turning them on and off, but
But didn't we say before that we were gonna alternate those so that we could?
I did, but that we didn't have, we didn't have much conversation about that, and there seemed to be some concern about even operating them on a monthly rotating basis among the board. That's the feedback that I got. So I went to Elizabeth to see what her thoughts were. You know, it really doesn't make a hill of beans, you know, as far as if we run them for a month and then turn it off, or if we go and turn it on and stand there for 20 minutes or so while we check to see that everything normalizes, run fine, doesn't overheat, all that kind of stuff. You know, so it's just a matter of what's convenient and best for the operation. That's, you know, so that is that's still, the proposal is that on a monthly basis, one of the wells would be operated. When we go out and get the remote readings, we turn one off, we go to another. We can do it remotely when the SCADA is finished, the program is finished with all of the meters, but still, when we're out there, we do get physical readings to verify that everything is as we think, and at that time we were rotating well. You made it look like, what am I talking about with the
I might have missed something, because I thought we said we're gonna run, I thought you said you were gonna run the Ranchito well and run one of the other wells for a month, and then rotate it. Did I miss that?
No, that's it.
Is that what the requirement is for maintenance operation? Because
There's
I'm
no-
a
there's
firm
no-
stickler on this.
There's
Emergency.
nothing, right, there's nothing on the operating plan that I put together that addresses how the operation, it's more the maintenance,
Mhm.
which is different. You know, so it's seriously, what I would what I would do, what I'm recommending is that we operate it. I mean, I'm not talking about making commitments of water, that's what we're getting confused about. It's a matter of compliance with the regulation. We either don't operate the wells and go out and just, for a matter of just because we're gonna hold our ground at their emergency and turn them on and turn them off, and maybe stand there for enough time to watch it and hear it and, turn it off and then leave, and do that on a monthly basis or whatever, every couple months. Or operate one well, the other two would sit idle. You'd go out and you'd get the readings every month, but then you'd switch to the next one, okay? So that's just it's kind of a no harm, no foul on those. But what Elizabeth did say is, we've got to make sure that nobody that is provided any emergency funding is going to have any heartache with the fact that these wells are there and being operated on a monthly basis, on a rotating basis, and that they're dedicated for emergency purposes, but they're operated on a monthly basis. But then the next item is the groundwater reports. I think we've got to do that. The monthly reports need to be configured a little bit differently once we have the report finalized and brought off by the state, and they say that is correct, and MID and all of us have agreement on that, then those reports should also, right on the same line, show the groundwater production, so that we know that there's adequate production for consumption. And then the meter testing every 5 years. We really should be doing that. Now, customer meters, to go out and we normally wouldn't test customer meters unless somebody called and said, you have a problem, I think you're overbilling me, and we don't test meters that often, but there is equipment to be able to do that, pull it out, run two meters side by side, and it'll tell you, how accurate it is, or at least you get an idea, but do that every 5 years just to make sure they're good.
Russ has a comment, then we'll go to the public.
Well, I just, really quick little education. I had it in my mind that a pump had to be cycled every now and then just to keep the water fresh in the column and in the piping and stuff. Now, what is the typical minimum cycle length to keep it just ready to go?
From a hydraulic standpoint, it's good to run the wells periodically, because if you think about a well and there's an aquifer and it cascades in, if you let it sit for a long time, there's a potential of those, what they call perforations, becoming clogged. So to open it up and do it, it's probably a very good exercise for the well. And it also would get rid of the old water, it would be blended, so on and so forth, so from
How often?
Oh, excellent.
Yes, I mean, the production up here is pretty minimal. I mean, if, with the staff, I think if they could do it on a monthly basis, that's good. If they did it on a weekly basis, it's whatever.
It was my question.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do, because it will clear out that water, it will get things moving through the aquifer, and then, the gunk or sand or whatever will fall down. And otherwise you could, over a long period of time of a well setting and those perforations not being used, it could clog them up, and that affects your drawdown in your production and everything else, so.
And it's not an industry standard, because it depends on your water too.
How hard it is.
How hard, and, yeah.
Okay,
TDS.
let's go for public comment, then we'll.
Well, it's just the same comment as before. USDA, and I believe the state grantors also said the money was for existing customer use. As soon as you add one additional customer, you have violated the terms of that grant.
I think if I heard, we're gonna get clarification that we can run these for.
Oh, yeah, oh, no problem, and existing outside of my DPOU, no problem with that either, because they're existing customers. But when you add one more to that outside of my DPOU report in 2016,
Let's get clarification on that before.
It should have never happened. The board didn't do it in a public meeting, so it had to have been done behind the scenes.
I'm hoping I've got to know.
That man right there knows what happened. That man right there is the one that
Let's
did
not
it.
We don't know that.
Hey, I'll tell you what, there absolutely, if there's one member of the board that has any question, I want to hear it right now, because there is absolutely no additional connections outside the place of use in the time that I've been here.
Unless somebody is leaking them, right? Unless somebody is taking water
Stealing.
from them.
No, it's not even,
No.
it's not even that. It's
The
a
question-
misnumbering and a change in name, and we'll figure it out.
Like I
If you
said,
really
we'll
want me to put my effort
Changing,
into it,
changing a
I
name doesn't add an account.
Okay, let us get
just telling
clarification, and I'm fine, okay. So another public comment, we'll move on. Okay, do I have a motion? For B, for 5B?
What's the motion gonna be? To approve this?
The motion that's proposed,
I'll move the recommended motion.
okay, Emery made the recommended motion, do I have a second? Russ seconded, all in favor? Got a unanimous vote. Okay, moving on to item 5C. This is adoption of a resolution authorizing the general manager to execute a grant agreement with the California Department of Water Resources